To another live stream. We have got a lot to talk about today, folks. All eyes right now are on the Federal Reserve and the FOMC. We'll be getting the announcement from Jerome Powell and his cronies around 2 o'clock today, Eastern time. But in the meantime, there's a lot going on that I think is not getting adequate attention. We are on the verge of a major escalation in the Middle East, a major regional conflict. I want to go over some updates regarding that because, listen, when that thing pops off, the price of gold, oil, silver, it's all going to soar. And there are a lot of reasons to be stacking hard assets, gold and silver right now. We're going to get into those, talk a little bit about the economy too and how crazy inflation is getting right now and some really wild examples of that. And talk a little bit about the Fed too. All right, first of all, as I mentioned, there's a lot of reasons to be stacking gold and silver right now. You want to buy some gold and silver, make sure you check out today's video sponsor, sdbullion.com. Right now, new customers can get gold or silver at spot by visiting sdbullion.com/new. Okay, so hello to everybody in the chat there. Welcome. Welcome to the live stream. We've got some ominous news to cover today, folks. And do me a favor, we're going to get into it in just a moment. Smash that like button. It's very helpful to me and to the channel to get this out into the algorithm. So we'll get right into it now with the news roll here. Here's a sign. Things are escalating. Kim Jong-un orders military food reserves restored at all costs. Now, North Korea used up a lot of its rice reserves during the COVID pandemic. They were releasing supplies of rice, I suppose, to the public there. And now those have been depleted. Well, he's ordered that these military food reserves will be restored at all costs. What is it he's getting ready for? Well, we know North Korea is allied with Russia now militarily. So, just put two and two together here, folks. Could very well be that, if we get a U.S. intervention in the Middle East, then North Korea may take advantage of that and take out South Korea. They basically told us as much, that if the U.S. tries to intervene against a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, that they will do that. So there's a lot of things that are going on in the world today right now, folks, that we need to be paying attention to that the mainstream media might report on it a little bit. I mean, this is from Radio Free Asia, so I don't know that you're hearing about this in the U.S., but when you start putting these things together, it's pretty clear that we are on the verge of a major escalation. And we need to be getting prepared for that. You want more evidence of that? It's not just North Korea preparing for war. You have also now got new players entering into this Middle East conflict with Yemen's Houthis. So this is like a fractional element within Yemen. They're kind of in charge of the capital. They're not the official internationally recognized government, but nonetheless, they have weapons at their disposal. They are allied with Iran. And they have now essentially declared war on Israel in sort of a de facto way. Now, it's not like they got together and, declared war in an official way, but they have now claimed that responsibility for firing drones and missiles at Israel. We knew that was happening. In fact, the U.S. intercepted some of those missiles and drones, but now the Houthis are officially taking responsibility for it. And they're telling us that there will be more attacks on the way. So, on its own, I don't know how capable the Houthi fighting force is. They're a bit of a distance away from Israel, so I don't think it's, like an imminent ground invasion or anything. But what this does tell us is that these Iranian-linked groups throughout the Middle East are rallying together, and that could be the trigger for a major escalation. In response, we now have Israel deploying missile boats in the Red Sea to intercept some of these missile attacks from Yemen. And so, this has implications as well for the ability of the Israelis to defend themselves. So they've got these, Iron Dome interceptors. They've got missile boats that can take out missiles. But one of the things is, these interceptors are not cheap. I think an Iron Dome interceptor, which is one of these land-based rocket interceptor systems, they cost something like $500,000 a piece. Whereas, rockets that the Houthis or, Hamas or Hezbollah will be firing likely have a significantly lower price tag. And so even if the Israelis are able to intercept these things, they do it at a great cost, and eventually their supply of interceptors will become depleted. Now, what does that mean? It means that they may be subject to more casualties from these rocket attacks, which in and of itself is escalatory, but also it means that the U.S. is probably going to have to foot the bill for replenishing all of these interceptors. So, this is a sign that even without a major escalation, in the sense that, Iran or one of these other very big players could get drawn in, the price tag for this conflict is likely to be very high. Now, from the U.S. standpoint, we have got a report that the USS Eisenhower carrier strike group has entered the Mediterranean. You've got the USS Gerald Ford currently stationed in the eastern Mediterranean. But, if you want to know why this is somewhat alarming, is that as far as I know, the Dwight D. Eisenhower will not be stopping in the Mediterranean. This is a report from last week that carrier strike group will actually be sent to the Persian Gulf. So, I don't know that much about military stuff. I'm not a military guy, but, I can look at a map and I know that if you're sending something to the Persian Gulf, Persia is just another word for Iran. And you can see here that if they're heading to the Persian Gulf, that probably isn't to defend Israel. Israel's over here, Persian Gulf here. Look who's right here, Iran. Okay, now I imagine, and again, maybe I'm mistaken about this. There's a lot of stuff to keep up with, but you've probably got the Eisenhower is going to transit the Suez Canal there on its way to the Persian Gulf. That is what it looks like to me. If you have any more updated information on where the Eisenhower is headed, feel free to put it in the chat or the comments. But they're entering the Mediterranean, and now they're heading to the Persian Gulf. Again, this is from CBS News that says, as tensions heighten in the Middle East, and this is from last week, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin declared late Saturday that the U.S. will redeploy one of its strike groups to the Persian Gulf, as well as send additional air defense systems to the region. And they are already doing that. They've sent, a number of these THAAD missile defense systems to the Middle East, and that is to help defend U.S. forces there in Syria and in Iraq and in Saudi Arabia. Not good that they're going to the Persian Gulf instead of the Eastern Mediterranean. Why would you send a force to the Persian Gulf there? It is exclusively for a war against Iran. So the stage is being set here, folks, for a broad regional conflict. And, will that be World War III? Are we already in World War III? It's really semantics at this point, I think, because it will certainly be very costly. And it could send the price of oil skyrocketing. Now, if that happens, prepare for all-out economic collapse. We have a very fragile economy here. It's already plagued by massive inflation, which we're going to get into in just a moment. But $150 oil, $200 oil, likely what we would see should Lindsey Graham get his way and the U.S. attack Iranian oil facilities. Remember, Iran is exporting more than 2 million barrels of oil per day, largely to China, but oil is an international market. So that's a pretty big chunk of global oil production. I think it's like 2%. So, that would be a huge problem for the U.S. economy. If you think that it's a problem now with gasoline prices where they're at, wait for them to double or triple. How do you think that would affect the economy? You let me know. And that's not all we've heard from Lindsey Graham. Further signs that an escalation is imminent. You've got Senator Lindsey Graham asking if it is a red line for an Iran-backed militia to kill Americans. So if we see a casualty from these ongoing attacks against U.S. military personnel throughout the Middle East, there are certainly folks in Washington who would like to use that as a casus belli, a reason to launch attacks on Iran. This is what he said before the Senate Appropriations Committee. We had Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin stopping short of vowing an American military response against Iran itself. And then in a tense back and forth with Mr. Graham, South Carolina Republican, the Pentagon chief said only that Iran should be held accountable for the actions of its proxy groups. So who knows, maybe cooler heads will prevail, but there are some very hawkish folks that would like to make that a red line. And that's a big problem because attacks against U.S. military personnel in the Middle East are ongoing. We've seen about 24, this is 2 days old, so probably significantly more attacks now against U.S. troops in Iraq and Syria. One U.S. contractor died of a heart attack, is the report, following an attack, but mostly these are minor injuries, although some folks have suffered traumatic brain injuries. So one can only imagine there were some explosions. I don't know if we'll get the full picture about what's going on over there, but it's not looking good. And one thing you might look out for as a red line here is a U.S. military personnel casualty from these attacks, which are being launched by Iranian-backed militant groups throughout the Middle East. Remember, you got Hezbollah in the north, you have Palestinian Islamic Jihad. There's a number of these groups that are backed and trained by Iran. And so, if American soldiers start dying, now I would say that it'd be a lot harder for them to target our forces if they weren't over there in the first place. But, that's neither here nor there. I'm just some guy on the internet, so who cares what I have to say? Also, something we need to look out for here, the FBI warning that terrorism threats have hit a whole other level after Hamas attacks. So, terror threats here domestically in the U.S., according to the FBI, something we need to watch out for. Now, could that be a genuine terror attack? Could it be one of those FF attacks? Who knows, right? But if we see something like that, all bets are off, and there's just such a powder keg situation here that we need to keep our heads on a swivel. Now, let's talk about the financial effect of this. We know the U.S. debt is exploding. We know that the Treasury just told us that over this quarter and the next quarter, they're going to be borrowing an additional $1.5 trillion. They just wrapped up a quarter, Q3, where we borrowed over $1 trillion. So the debt is exploding. Don't expect that to slow down anytime soon as these events continue to play out in the Middle East. Now, gold and silver. Gold had been catching a bit of a safe haven bid. It was up over $2,000. Crude oil moving higher today in the green, but still only at $82. Gold pulling back a little bit. A lot of this has to do with, all eyes on the Fed. Again, we got the FOMC meeting in just a couple of hours. The FOMC announcement, rather, the meeting is being conducted right now. But listen, what the Fed does, whether the Fed hikes rates by 25 basis points or they cut rates by 25 basis points or they leave rates where they're at. Who really cares at this point? I don't think it's going to matter. Inflation is out of control. These events that are playing out, excuse me, geopolitically will have a much bigger impact ultimately on these markets than what the Fed does. However, right now, that's not the case. Everybody is fixated on the Fed. They're obsessed with the Fed. It's the only thing driving markets still to this day, which is pretty wild. I think that oil at $82 or $83, gold under $2,000, silver under $23 are all incredible opportunities. Not financial advice, by the way. I'm just telling you what I'm doing and how I'm viewing things. But if you want the preview of what the Fed's going to do, we got the CME FedWatch tool here. 98% chance of a pause, 2% chance of a 25 basis point rate hike. They're going to pause, if you ask me. The Fed is in the business of delivering to markets what they expect, and also they're aware that the whole economy is teetering on the verge of collapse. The banks are all insolvent. You got Jamie Dimon telling us last week that we're living through the most dangerous times in decades. And at the same time, he announced just recently he's selling 1 million shares of JP Morgan, largest bank in the U.S. First time he's sold any shares in 18 years at the helm. So what does that tell you? Smart money is getting ready for some big problems here, folks. And I think that's why the Fed is pausing. Now, it's funny that the Fed is pausing, because it's obvious to me that we don't know if they're going to pause, by the way. It hasn't happened yet, but my money would be on that. But I think that the reason that markets believe that they're going to pause and why that's probably what we're going to see is because they know that the system can't withstand any more interest rate hikes. Everything is extremely fragile. And I see a few folks saying hello in the chat there. Hello. Hey, do me a favor, smash that like button if you find this video helpful. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Follow me on Twitter at StackSmarter. There, shameless plugs complete. Okay. Now, we know that the reason that the Fed is pausing is not because inflation has come under control. That's certainly not the case. Just look at this headline. Now, this is one of those kind of viral stories that was going around. McDonald's revenue soars by 14% after hiking menu prices. Up to $18 for a Big Mac combo deal. $18 for a Big Mac combo meal. Can you imagine that? I mean, the stuff they sell at McDonald's, I hesitate to even call it food. And yet they think that a Big Mac combo is worth 18 bucks. Now, I'll tell you what, if I don't really eat at McDonald's, I try not to eat too much fast food. When I do, it's not McDonald's. But, if I'm going to spend $18 on food, I'm not going to be doing it at McDonald's. That is for sure. But this is following, I believe they called these strategic price hikes or something like that. So it's not across the board. Your local McDonald's probably not charging 18 bucks. That was just at one McDonald's in Connecticut. But all across the country, it depends where you're at. I guess the higher traffic areas, places maybe with more money to spend on garbage fast food, they can hike these prices up. But I mean, just think about that. That is an incredible amount of food inflation. And you're actually seeing McDonald's, after beginning to hike these rates, seeing their revenue soar. So what do you think other businesses are going to do? A lot of businesses, as inflation has been running out of control, I think they've been, excuse me, doing what they can to keep prices reasonable, to not lose shares, to not lose market share, to not lose customers because of soaring prices. But there comes a point where businesses have to make a profit, and as their costs for labor and materials and all these things, rent, taxes, everything goes up, they got to make up for that somehow. So, that's where you get $18 for a Big Mac combo meal. I mean, it's wild stuff, in 2023, but this is just the beginning, folks. If even if World War III doesn't break out, there's so much inflation that's already been created out there in the system, so much money, that you're going to see these prices continue to move up. But if Lindsey Graham gets his way and we drop bombs on Iran's oil fields, it's global economy, even though globalization is on the decline, you're going to see the price of food and everything else shoot up unbelievably. It'll be to the point probably where $18 for a Big Mac combo meal sounds like a steal. Although, I don't know. I mean, tell me if you would be willing to pay $18 for a Big Mac. Put a 1 in the chat, put a 2 if you think that that's a little excessive and you wouldn't touch an $18 Big Mac with a 10-foot pole. I mean, me personally, I don't know if you could pay me to eat a Big Mac, but some people, I guess, are paying it because you're seeing McDonald's beginning to get increased revenue from that. But that's pretty much all I got for you today, folks. Just a quick update that things are not looking good. Get prepared, take advantage of the time we have here when, you can still get hard assets for a reasonable price. I think silver is the most undervalued asset in the world out there, under $23, despite the fact that we are on the verge of a major collapse. And let me know what you think about all of this in the comments down below. And hey, we're at 95 likes. Do me a favor, 5 of you. There's 300 people watching. Smash that like button. Get us over 100. I would really appreciate that. All right, that's it for today, everybody. Stay safe and happy stacking, and I will catch you next time. Smart Silver Stacker, out.